So we'll now move on to the next event in our schedule, which is the AI panel for AI at scale in the Middle East. And here I would like to call upon our panelists to come onto the couches here on stage. So our first panelist will be Aurick Qiao, CEO at Petuum Incorporated. Next, we have Guowei, who is a principal engineer at the Inception Institute for Artificial Intelligence. Merouane Debbah, who is chief researcher at Technology Innovation Institute, IIAI, and an adjunct professor at MBZUAI. And finally, last but not least, Shan, who is professor at the University of Chicago. Perfect. And so today I will be the host for the panel, and so I'll be asking some questions that are relevant to growing ecosystems for AI at scale here in the Middle East. So let's just take a second, check that. Is everyone ready? Okay. Yes. Right. My wire is good. Yes. Okay. Great. All right, so the first question I have for our panel is, what possibilities from scaling up AI excite you the most? And microphones are on the table. Who would like to take that question first?
So, nice to meet you all. I'm Guowei from Inception. Of course, that's the saving the cost, because I do manage a few hundred GPUs, a few thousand CPU cores, and this computing power is being constantly transformed to the amazing AI products by our AI genius, who are also here, Dr. Neha and all their folks, right? So they cost millions and millions of dollars, right? So doing it at scale, not just big. Well, in Middle East, we like big things, right? Big projects, big cluster, big models. But right now, we are doing it at scale, not just big, at the right scale, in a smart way, and to best utilize the cost to get the most output, to get the amazing AI product. That would be my answer to this question.
Great. And I want to elaborate a little bit more on what you think those AI outputs would be. Would you be able to share a little bit about maybe what your organization is doing in terms of what those big AI outputs will look at scale? Because we definitely see that there are the resources to perform that computation, right? And I was thinking, like, what kinds of for example, impact you want to make on the local business environment. Do you have any remarks to share on that matter?
So in Inception, we basically aiming at making the AI product for the local good, right? So we have the opportunity and the unique advantage that can utilize all the products, all the technology all over the world, right? So including, well, we are the best friend of Petuum and also university, right? We have the best opportunity to use this product. And then we actually incorporate the local insight. For example, our NLP team led by Dr. Neha is actually having our Emirati dialect incorporate into our NLP product. So, and with Rampart and all your this no-code system, I can imagine those our in-house Emirati linguists can actually just drag and drop their latest AI models to tweak the input and the output. This actually extended to our AI development pipeline to this previously impossible developer and users. And hopefully this AI product will also have a significant advantage in the local market.
Great, and you touched on a couple of points over there that I think is relevant to the whole panel. One is this drag and drop idea that it really is bringing the creation of AI at scale to this, I would say, to more organizations, to organizations with less capability. At the same time, it's addressing a need that is totally relevant to Emirati society, which is of course the Emirati dialect, but also in a sense it's globally important because the need for training AI techniques for languages that have traditionally been less well served than some of the well-known ones, such as English models, for instance, right? I think that's also a very noble goal. And speaking of technology for Emiratis, I would think that, say, Professor Merouane, Debbah, you might have some insights to share on what are TII's efforts in this space. Like, how are we growing AI for scale to benefit local UAE society?
Yeah, so maybe I should introduce TII and the AI activity that we're running there. So TII is a new initiative which started more than 2 years ago, and it's similar as an applied center that you have around the world, like the Fraunhofer Institute in Germany, A-Star in Singapore, and other places that you can have, like INRIA in France. We have actually 10 centers, basically, and they work on the different, I would say, what we call priority sectors of the UAE. And this goes from aerospace, health and agriculture. You have also, of course, cyber security. You have basically also things which are related to transport. And that has been translated into 10 centers, which are the Propulsion Research Center. We have the Biotech Research Center, the Advanced Material Research Center, and a couple of centers. And the AI activity at the moment is more or less building the building blocks to support all these different centers for these key sectors of the UAE. And we started working and building the building blocks, and this is how we got into exascale models in terms of understanding. And the general approach that we thought about is understanding better, basically, for a given computing budget, how we can get most of it, okay? And this started with a project that we launched, which was called Noor, which is building this large language model in Arabic with 10 billion parameters and understanding the pipeline that you can have in that. And that was very interesting because at the moment we started that project, at the same time, there was a couple of papers appearing showcasing that bigger is not the best solution. There was a changing law in terms of how you go exascale, in the sense that you were going to much more numbers, like 500 billion numbers, and then Chinchilla came in and changed a bit the kind of perspective, on which basically you should play with all the numbers related to the amount of training time you're doing, the number of parameters, number of tokens. And that was very good for us because we understood how we could build up a pipeline in terms of optimizing the number of parameters and getting this 10 billion, which roughly was a very interesting, I would say, kind of output. And it serves, of course, the community with respect to maybe people know that kind of models. It's the kind of models where you could do a summary of text in Arabic, you could do narration of text of Arabic, you could prompting and things like that. So I think that's the first thing. Second thing also, which I think is important in this exascale and for us, is that COP28 is coming in next year here in the UAE. And I think the work that we're doing in MBZUAI, TII, and others should also approach something around that. And this is something we built also within the Noor project in understanding what we call the carbon footprint of building exascale models. And after I can comment on the kind of things we got up from this carbon footprint.
Great. Merouane, I'm impressed that TII has really displayed in that statement that you made the level of expertise that's now available in the UAE in what I call the how-to for AI at scale, right? You've touched on many topics such as for example, the efficiency trade-offs between training and parameters. You've touched on exascale computing, and you've even touched on, what are the specific, I believe, nuances of dealing with the Arabic language over here. And I wanted to ask, how do you think, what was the journey that led TII to gain this experience of doing AI at scale? What lessons do you have to share for our audience over here?
Well, as I told you, the mandate that we have was supporting the different centers that we have. We have a biotech center, which is getting a lot of data with its collaboration with a propulsion center, which is also doing a lot of things in terms of engines. We have also basically a center related to advanced materials, doing new discoveries of new types of materials. So it started with that in understanding how we could support them with their data that they're having. And of course, the tendency today was to look at approaches to support with a huge amount of data they have and building that blocks that also Eric Xing was talking in a very nice manner. We were quite lucky because we're going in a transition where people are understanding a bit, at least, how to build those exascale models and understanding basically the trade-offs that we're talking. And of course now the quality of the researchers that we're having in the UAE, which our forum is increasing, even at universities. For example, my director of the AI unit, which is called Petuum, is giving a talk here. She's one of the first Emirati, which is getting a degree at the crossroad of AI and telecommunication. So we're having, at the same time, a high level of people getting out from the universities is the right time. And also many initiatives like TII, MBZUAI, which are running, so we could capture those people who knew, because that's also a very good expertise you have to know. It's very narrow when you build exascale. It's not something that you find on the market, and in general, even its resources. But people are coming now here in the UAE to do these things. And we have collaborated for people who are interested with a startup company in France called Lighton, which was already starting to build a model in French in France. And that was also a kickoff which was quite rapid in acquiring for us the knowledge and moving forward on that.
Fantastic, and I think the lessons we can draw from that are that, well, first of all, the good news is that the talent community here in the UAE is clearly growing in terms of its ability to address AI at scale, exascale computing, and many of the deep technical needs that are required for this economy of new AI models that really operate at these very large scales. And I'm also delighted to hear that you think that it's not just the homegrown talent or the influx of talent, but also the collaborative relationships with partners in Europe, for example, partners in America, partners all around the world, to speak. You know, I wanted to ask the panel, and
maybe one comment before you finish is also something which is important now is we're seeing also a lot of computing capability here for us. And I mean, MBZUAI made an announcement during GITEX about their computing, supercomputing powered. I think it's a good thing. And that was also something that we had to sort out a couple of months ago, and we're happy that we're finding more and more supercomputing power available here in the UAE. And I think this is also a big change factor for all this research that is going to be being done in the exascale realm.
Great. And, you know, putting the picture together, right? Talent and collaboration, you know, the people power, and then there's the hard power, the hardware power. And the next question I'm going to ask is actually perhaps directed at our other two panelists, which is this piece called software, right? So I don't mean necessarily the model itself, but the entire supporting software infrastructure that really connects the people on the one hand who are using the software to the hardware that it's going to run on here. And I wanted to maybe direct my next question at Aurick Qiao. How do you see the relationship between software and AI at scale? Like, what role does it have to play in this grand scheme where we have talent and collaboration on the one hand and hardware on the other?
Yeah, thanks, Qiao. So first of all, really glad to be here in front of everyone today, and please excuse the voice. But touching on one of the previous questions as well, you know, one of the really exciting parts about this new latest generation of large models is that they are trained on the internet's data, and they provide a very good foundation, very good jumping point to bring that knowledge into every corner of the market, into every corner of the globe, right? So based on some of these new models that are being trained nowadays, we can very easily use them to make them into a specialist in medicine, a specialist in law, a specialist in Arabic, and so on. So one of the things I'm really excited to see in the next few years is taking these very large models and bringing them into every corner of the market where they can really bring out the value out of all the data that is around the world, right? And I think in that scenario, there is a very significant role for software and hardware to play because in a lot of these areas of the world, we're not able to just use any public cloud. We want to be able to leverage the infrastructure that we have in-house in the region in order to really get the value out of the data that is locked into each region in the world, right? So in this future where these models are bringing value into every corners of the market, I think there's a very significant role for hardware and software and people to start interplaying with each other in different ways, depending on where the market is, right?
And to follow up on what you were saying, right? So as we're connecting the dots here, right, we've talked about the applications on the one hand, and then we've talked about the talent and collaborations, we've talked about the hardware, and you bring in this new piece, which is about really connecting the data to all of the other pieces, right? Would you say that that is perhaps the main function of the software, that it is really centered around bringing data to people, to talent, to hardware, and of course to the applications? Or is there perhaps a more nuanced view about this that you'd like to share with us here?
Well, yes, I think at a high level that is basically correct in that there's a few fundamental things that we need in order for AI to be truly valuable. And one of the things is compute, the second thing is data, and the third thing is talent, right? And one of the key roles for any software to play in this space is to bring these three pieces together in the most effective way possible in order to get the value that is inherent in the data, in the infrastructure, and in the hardware, and is inherent in the talent that's in the region in order to solve the most important problems in every market in the region today, right?
I almost imagine that software is really this, to use a children's toy analogy, the Play-Doh, the flexible glue that really adapts to the contours of the local talent we have available, the local application needs, and the specific configuration of hardware we have here, right? And would you say that's perhaps an accurate description of the role that software has got to play in connecting these perhaps pieces that perhaps maybe move less on a less rapid time scale, evolve on a less rapid time scale than software can do?
Yes, of course.
Great. All right. And I wanted to ask our, Professor Shan over here. You are an expert at the systems, the software and the hardware systems that have really powered most of the developments in computer science and, of course, artificial intelligence as well. We wanted to get your perspective on how these pieces evolve in tandem with the application needs, with the evolving software landscape, and also the evolving hardware landscape. Do you have any insights to share with us on how these factors might play in to shape how AI at scale will grow and move forward in the Middle East region?
Okay, so first of all, I'm very happy to be here, and I feel like I know the least among these panelists about, to be honest, AI and also Middle East. So I feel like I'm learning a lot. So just going back to your question, so I would just kind of like give you some of my thoughts, right? Almost like from outsider's perspective. So when I look at AI, I mean, I first think about how we can use AI, right? Because I know there are experts who are building this AI. And we have, for example, we have looked at like normal developers, right, who doesn't know AI that much, right? Now that if you have a model at scale, right, I would imagine developers will be excited to use it, right? So I feel like there's a good question. I think like how to enable, right, like people who does not know AI that much, right? But maybe a good, but they can do web developing, okay? They can develop web application. I feel like most web developers these days, they want to put some AI, right, into it, particularly when you have a large scale AI model there. I don't know. We have seen all kinds of problems for these, non-AI people to use AI. And now that you have this large scale, I think it's good to think about, in addition to, right, allowing those experts, right, talent people to use your AI model, how to enable, a large number of, I would say, normal developers to use AI. And another thing, I was just listening to this, I feel like, wow, this is all amazing. I didn't know all these things going on here. I actually have a question. I've heard some people telling me, saying sometimes to enable, right, the use of the AI, sometimes it depends on other things, such as, for example, do you have the sensor? Do you have the networking to collect all the data that you need? Or do you have the, the computation infrastructure? to deliver, right, the decision of the AI model to people, for example, to farmers or to, field workers that can actually use the AI. So actually, I'm curious, in addition to like data center supercomputing, just in general, are there, what's the infrastructure like right now in Middle East?
This is an excellent question for our panel to perhaps give us more insight into this. And I'm wondering, perhaps between Guowei from IIAI and Professor Merouane from TII, do you have insights into how data information modalities are actually being brought into the artificial intelligence landscape here in the UAE? Are there any surprising insights that you can reveal to our audience?
Yeah, so let's say not all the companies here in the Middle East are at the same level of acquiring the data and processing it. If you go from Adjunct to another company, it's totally different. So Adjunct is the oil company here. And Aldar, for example, with whom we're talking at the moment, is another type of company. So of course, there are a lot of POCs which are taking place here. I've been talking to Aldar lately, and they're doing a POCs in Mamsha related to having IoT, Internet of Things, sensor, gathering those data, with doing some kind of smart city with the bins, things like that. So they are in the process of gathering this. What you say now is, of course, the infrastructure which is built around that. So of course, we had big players who have started here in the UAE. G42 is certainly one of the best example, which started all the story of this cloud computing and cloud perspective. But still, there's a lot of effort to be able to build this interfaces, distributiveness of the computing, with a lot of course, maybe on going on the edge, things like that, to make it more, I would say, pervasive in terms of availability here. But things are moving, and it's not at the same scale for each company that you have here. Yeah.
Fascinating. Guowei, do you have thoughts to share on data?
So I'm the supercomputing guy, right? So nowadays it's becoming like supercomputing and AI for everyone. So I used to somehow monopolize the large language model distributed training in my institute, right? And everybody wanted to do that, need to ask me nicely. Until you guys showed up and say that, okay, I have this castle components with this AdaptDL and Alpha. And then now people just need to have the software installed, and then just Python one-liner, and then all this large language model, all the compute are hidden behind. So I think that will definitely be the trend, right? So in UAE, we don't lack of computing power. We just lack of the smart way of doing that. And I think that's what TII, university, and us are doing, right? And for the data, I think it's more about increasing the talent pool locally, right? The more people can get engaged, the more data we will get, right? So that will be my take on this.
Great, and I think you also raised an interesting point that, perhaps this comes back to Professor Shan Liu's question, that in addition to the data and the pervasiveness of, let's call it our sensor network that Merouane brought up, right? These large models that are characterizing, say, some of the recent advancements in AI at scale, themselves are, you could think of them as an ingredient. They are indeed a source of data. They are the data itself, or a data producer, which can feed into perhaps applications that go downstream. I do sometimes wonder myself as a scientist, like, do any of you see these large models and how their, say, democratization is being affected by, for example, the castle ecosystem, or many of the wonderful efforts such as, say, Microsoft's DeepSpeed or other systems in the world, like, say, NVIDIA's Megatron. And I know these are some slightly technical names, but I've often wondered myself as a scientist, and maybe this is my final question to the panel, how do we see the relationship between data, pure data that is not considered AI, and some of these larger scale models that are perhaps, let's call it an embodiment of data? What relationship do these two have, or perhaps more to the point, how do you think these will change the way we use data in artificial intelligence? Will there be perhaps a greater dependence on these embodiments of data in the form of these large models. And this is, and especially a question that I'd like to ask Merouane and Guowei again, as your organizations are clearly very involved in the production of these models.
So I think what we're seeing in the landscape is quite interesting, because the openness of these large models, I mean, many of the big organizations have been opening their data, has triggered a lot of normal people, I would say not at all in the AI community, to start using it. And so now they're starting to understand how to think. I mean, you see stable diffusion, for example. It's quite incredible. Everybody, I mean, I get emails every time, and look, I did this and I implemented this. Look, what is basically a researcher in UAE, and he gets images. He's happy to see the kind of image that it tells him. So I think this is a very good sign, because this is going to bridge the gap in having more and more these I would say data people knowing how to use it, how to go back and understanding the models. So I think this openness which is going on is a big change in our community, because now we're bringing it to the level of somebody who does not know anything about AI. And I can tell you, people who know nothing about AI are now like playing with that and being very comfortable with that, and this is going to bridge the gap. Now, of course, there are still some issues with the data. I mean, if I go back to the example of Noor that we built, a lot, for example, in Arabic, there are still a lot of things to do. For example, in Arabic, a lot of the data that we had in Arabic are images, and they were not text, meaning that you had to extract, because PDFs and Word documents, it's not the plethora of Arabic written that you have, and that was an issue. So there's still a bit of an issue for people to understand what are the formats of data that you have, all these processes that they're going. But I think it's tremendous, the openness, how much it created a huge, basically, community playing with that, and I think it's going to be more and more good for us.
Right. Guowei, your thoughts as well?
Yeah, I think it's the fundamental question is like we all know what we want to build in the end, right? We have a visions of what the end game we want to achieve, and in order to achieve that, all the things like what model we use, what the computer we use, what data we get, they are tools, right? Like, for example, you guys have this nice demo on the GITEX, on the stable diffusion alpha large language model. So it's like you guys already built the Eiffel Tower with the Lego bricks, right? Mm-hmm. So I think in UAE, specifically in my organization, we have these amazing AI talents want to build the local market oriented and connective AI products. And I would say that maybe this is like using the Lego bricks from the Qiao consortium to build our Zayed Grand Mosque in Abu Dhabi.
Yes.
I think that would be the case. And in order to achieve that, we have all this local talent. They can tell us where to find the correct data. So that would be my take on this, and that's what we're working on.
Great, fascinating perspective, and I think the conclusion here is that it's clear that there are many ecosystem pieces, Lego bricks, as you said, Guowei, that come together to produce this rich ecosystem of perhaps AI and AI at scale. And I'd like to close this panel with maybe just coming back to our other panelists here to ask the question, what do you think the world might look like with these developments in AI at scale in, say, about 3 years, 5 years? Where do you see the future going? Just to leave a thought for our audience.
Right, that's a really great question. So I want to reflect back on what Dr. Debbah said about the models in the current generation become a lot more easy to use for everyone broadly in the world, right? And this is something brought upon by the characteristics of these models being able to just handle natural language inputs, whether it be in English or Arabic or any other language. And this is one of the key characteristics that's different from the previous generation of models, whereas in previous generations of AI, you really needed to be an expert in order to tune the model, in order to try to get a model to do different things that you wanted to do, right? But in these new generation of larger AI models that's able to handle natural text, really you can just talk to it in how you would talk to a normal person, almost, and get it to do different kinds of tasks, right? And this is really significant because It brings about the power of AI to everyone in the world, not just the AI experts, right? You can be someone who works at a restaurant at home and you're teaching Stable Diffusion to generate different kinds of images. You're able to teach a model like GPT-3 or a large language model to perform different language tasks just by talking to it in plain English or plain Arabic. And I think really in 3 years that this effect is really going to accelerate and take off, in that a lot of the work being done on customizing and innovating on models might be done broadly by the community, by non-AI experts, instead of just being in the ivory tower of the expert data scientists and domain experts, right? And I think that's something really exciting to look forward to.
Indeed.
Maybe one additional comment, and also in terms of because we're in a research community, it accelerates a lot of things in research also. So when Stable Diffusion was released, so I was talking with one of my guys and I said, oh, this is great. So the guys are doing text to image. I said, let's kickstart rapidly text to video, because basically a video is just a concatenation. I said, let's do it and find a way. It's not going to be perfect, but we're going to be doing it. 2 days afterwards, in the archive, a paper is published exactly doing those things. So people make the connections quite rapidly. You know, I have text to images, a video is a concatenation. It was not the best paper in the world, by the way, but it still did it. And I think you're going to have a lot of acceleration in a lot of different things like that. When you have that kind of model, you will tweak it, you will add a part, and you're going to have a cycle which is going to be generated. And this, I think, openness is very good for all of us from that point of view.
I hear openness, I hear acceleration. And Professor Shan Lu, would you like to provide us with some closing thoughts on your hopes?
As I said, I feel like I learned a lot, so maybe I want to take some, just ask a quick question. I feel like in terms of future, I feel like there are a lot of things going beyond the technical things. And I feel like particularly at the beginning, right, people just try to make things larger scale, faster, and then later on soon some other non-technical things would appear. And I feel like at different places, there seems to be different non-technical concerns. Like for example, from where I grew up in China, I feel like say privacy is not necessary, it's not that big a concern. But I feel like now, for example, in US, I feel like this privacy and also the ethical issue of AI is become bigger and bigger concern. I wonder, because I've heard like there are, you know, things, I heard that is, for example, the language, right, is a unique thing about Middle East. I just wonder, other than this language, do you see particularly, you know, beyond the technical, right? Because I feel like after 3 or 5 years, but probably there will be very mature technical. At that time, do you anticipate some non-technical challenge, particularly unique to Middle East?
Great. And we'll have time for one more answer before we move on the schedule. But this is a great closing question, because we must address all aspects of the ecosystem, including the ethical and privacy aspects. So, Merouane, it looks like you have thoughts to share on that.
I don't necessarily have a thought, but for sure it will come. I mean, I think there's going to be 2 issues. There's going to be the issue related to the privacy and ethical aspects, and the other also everything which is related to the energy aspects. You know, this is also very important, and we're seeing it. You know, some communities which are working on these things are having a hard time, high criticism, because of all the impact that we're having in computing just to create a model and the costs. So I think these 2 issues are going to come, and we have a lot of experiences in when you're not too inclusive, when you start progressing in technical aspects, then it flies back on you and you have issues. So I think this is something we need to be sure that we take at the beginning, irrespective of the region, by the way. I mean, but here it will come rapidly right now, and and this is something we're trying to build up. Not easy to do, by the way, but yeah.
Great. All right. Okay. So, yes, looks like we have an audience question. Perfect. Or why not? Audience participation fully encouraged.
I think this question about non-technical new things to anticipate in the next 3 to 5 years is really intriguing. So I've been here for 2 years already, and I've been trying to build a new university. But why we need a new university, or what the university can do, that's actually quite aligned with your question, right? In addition to bringing in new technology, you know, seeding innovation capability and so forth, one thing I find very intriguing and maybe exciting is that imagine that you have now a new universe where AI technology capability is taken for granted. It's all over there already. And you are a new citizen enter into this universe. What would be the exciting thing, right? I think a new mindset and also a new culture, that is really infused with AI innovation, data science, and also data-driven decision making is not yet available everywhere. But I think in the Middle East region there is an opportunity, because this region is relatively less interfered or congested with all this noisy and crazy information fanfared by the media, fanfared by all sorts of sources, and also heavily manipulated through government and other big corporates, in anywhere else in the world. I feel like here you have a relatively cleaner slate to start things anew. And I'm very excited to see what good things and what risks can come out of it, right? So you are entering a new age with a new technology, but you are not yet, carrying all the legacy and all the baggage, from this transition. And that's, to me, something I want to anticipate in the next 3 and 5 years. So explore what good thing can happen, without, cleaning up the legacy and everything.
Great. Thank you so much, Aurick, for the comments. And I think to summarize the entire panel, we have the breadth of coverage of the ecosystem, as you can see from the wonderful discussion. We have the momentum and speed. And as Aurick, you kindly pointed out, we also have that clean slate to try and experiment. So let's thank all of our panelists for the wonderful discussion. And we will now move on with our next speaker,